We are approaching cruising altitude, and next up we have a presentation by one of our Privasec senior security consultants, Angus Strom, titled Android Notification Malware. Angus is a senior consultant with our team in the Sydney office, and he has a wealth of experience in technical assurance with special interest in and expertise in both Android and iOS penetration testing methodologies. So please sit back and enjoy this following in-flight video. Thank you.
Hi all, I hope you've been having a good time with all the presentations. Welcome to my presentation titled Android Notification Malware and Why You Shouldn't Put that 2FA code there. In this talk we'll be quickly covering over the history of Android malware, as well as the notification listener and how malware has been recently abusing this old API in order to steal 2FA tokens. To start off, we'll do a quick who am I. My name's Angus. I'm otherwise known online under the handle 0x10f2c. You might see me occasionally on GitHub contributing to a few of the OWASP projects. Otherwise, I'm a senior consultant at Privacec and I work on the red side. That means that penetration testing on the offensive side is my main bread and butter, as well as the occasional red team. My primary focus area is in information security web, which is anything from web applications to web APIs, to even web views and mobile applications, which leads into my next main focus area, mobile as a whole, including both iOS and Android, but very much so in particular Android, which I find to be one of the funnest platforms to do penetration testing on. To repeat again, we'll be covering Android malware with a quick brief overview of malware on Android, and then going into some more recent variants that have been abusing, in particular, the notifications on Android in order to steal things like 2FA tokens, SMSs, and anything in between. This will be a fairly fast talk, and I've tried to keep it at a high level wherever possible, so that it's accessible to everyone in the audience. I've also provided sources where possible, so that if you want to go do your own research into this, well, hopefully that'll point you in the right direction. Android has had a long problem with malware on its platform. It's garnered a reputation for being the insecure brother of iOS, and perhaps there is good reasoning to this. Especially in the early days, Android was not all that secure a platform. Around 2010 was when the first waves of Android malware started hitting the Play Store. Google at this time didn't really have that much of a response, as the Google Play Store was quite lax in security back then. It was incredibly easy to submit malware-infected applications. With Android having such an open approach to applications and an open approach to developers in general, it made it a very attractive target for malware developers. Furthermore, the Android market share far surpasses that of the iOS market share, and wherever there are users, there is information to steal, and this again makes it an attractive target for malware developers. In the past, malware was rather simplistic. Why overcomplicate your solutions to steal data when most users were not all that aware of malware being a problem at the time? Not only that, they weren't aware that the permissions they were granting to these applications could be abused in the ways they are. So malware developers would in general just ask for the permissions they needed. For example, if a malware application wanted to steal SMSs, well, just ask for read and write. Furthermore, malware would often attach itself to a legitimate application that, within reasonable expectations, would need to use those permissions. This would hide the existence of the malware from both the Play Store and the end user. By the end of 2012, Android had really garnered quite a bad reputation for security. This is in part due to all the malware incidents, with many users being affected by malware and having their information stolen. Not only users, but Google also quickly realized that the Android operating system needed a major overhaul, with the goal in mind being security. Google started making massive strides in security on the Android platform with the release of Android 4.4. I won't get into the specifics of it, but the release of Android 4.4 could be considered a turning point for Android security. This is when Google really started revamping the internals of the Android platform so that it was designed with security in mind. And ever since the Android 4.4 release, Google has constantly had the security of Android as a platform in mind, with every release further tightening the security controls of the platform. Google even implemented automated malware scanners in order to address the rampant malware abuse on the Google Play Store. This not only scanned applications on the Google Play Store, but it actually also installed the Google Play Protect application to devices. This means that over 2.5 billion Android devices are actively scanning applications that are installed onto the device, even if they're sideloaded. And they'll scan them for malware, and this will feed back to Google into very advanced machine learning algorithms that try to identify malware patterns. If you ask for the SMS read or the SMS write permission and then try to submit your application to the Google Play Store, you actually have to also submit a declaration form. This declaration form is quite an involved process. You have to actually demonstrate to Google where you're using these dangerous permissions and why you're using them. And not only that, you have to justify their usage, so that if there's another API call that is less dangerous and you're still using the SMS read permission, for example, Google will generally bounce you back and say, use the less dangerous permission. In summary, we can see these dangerous permissions such as SMS read and SMS write are now very closely monitored by Google. This is due to their widespread abuse in the past in various malware samples. This means that any malware that just simply requests the read or the write permission isn't going to be all that successful, as it's very likely it'll be detected quite quickly. Recently, many malware developers have been trying to avoid the use of dangerous permissions. This is due to the previously mentioned reasons, with Google now automatically scanning most applications. It's very easy to automate the discovery of such dangerous permissions in an application, and to then, furthermore, flag it for manual review. Two recent examples of malware trying to avoid the use of dangerous permissions from this year are Joker and Alien, which both abuse the notification listener service in order to read SMSs, as well as any other notifications. We'll jump into the notification listener service further down the line. The Alien malware sample is also quite interesting from another perspective. It abuses the accessibility services within Android in order to grant itself the notification listener service permission. This is due to how accessibility services work on Android, and that once an application has this permission, it can actually programmatically interact with the user interface of the Android operating system on the phone. This means that it can obviously then click OK and tick boxes in order to grant itself a permission. But anyway, this is beyond the scope of the talk for now. It's also interesting to note that notification and listener service abuse is not a new trick. You can see in the slide here that I've actually included a screenshot of a research paper that was done in December of 2016 and basically discovers how the notification listener service can be used in order to read things like SMSs. On your screen right now, you can see two screenshots. On the left is a screenshot from the Threat Fabric article that tears down the Alien malware and analyzes its capabilities. We can see that the Alien malware is abusing the by notification listener server permission in order to get the content of the status bar notifications on the infected device. This article also further goes into the accessibility privilege abuse, in which the malware circumvents the countermeasure of having to grant the notification listener permission by performing all the necessary UI interactions itself by abusing the accessibility privileges. I'd highly recommend reading this article if this sort of malware interests you, as it's a great teardown. The screenshot on the right is from the Checkpoint research on the Joker variant. There has been a lot of research into the recent Joker variant, as it's very prevalent in the Android Play Store right now, with hundreds of samples being discovered. The main point in this is that the Joker malware utilizes the notification listener service in order to steal notifications and read SMSs. One of the main features of the Joker malware is that it's actually a premium SMS sign up. So normally when you sign up to these premium SMSs, you have to then verify your sign up with a code. This Joker malware will then steal the code through the notification and then sign you up, thus costing you money. It's important to understand that the Android platform broadcasts all notifications system-wide. This quite literally means that any notification that you see pop up on your screen, for example, is actually broadcasted in such a way that any application on the mobile phone, with the right permissions of course, can actually interact with that notification. It is a system-wide broadcast. It is this notification listener service that can be used by an application in order to listen for these broadcasted notifications and then action them in any way that the application seems fit. Having the permission for a notification listener service does not actually declare in any way how you're going to use it. Once you have that permission, you can do anything with the notification and the text it contains. Thus, obviously, an attacker can abuse this in order to intercept notifications, as I'll show in the next demo slide. With these notifications, they can then be sent off to some attacker-controlled infrastructure to then be used. One of the best examples of this would be intercepting a 2FA code. The malware would intercept the notification that contains the 2FA code and then send it off. An interesting side note here is that iOS actually doesn't have this problem with notifications. All notifications on iOS are actually private to the application that generates them. This means if application A generates a notification, application B cannot read application A's notifications. All notifications are considered to be private by Apple. Let's carry on into the demo. This is a notification listener service that I've created. I've provided the source code link down below if you want to run it yourself, but basically it just generates a notification listener service and then just listens for broadcasts and then puts them into a log within the application. Awesome, we can see the notifications going into the log there. So, what are the pros and cons of using this from a malware developer's perspective? Let's look at the pros. Well, it doesn't use the dangerous permission anymore. This is a massive benefit to Android malware developers. It's very easy to automate the analysis of permissions, as we've already previously mentioned. So, whenever possible, avoiding the use of dangerous permissions is great benefit, as this can sometimes bypass security automation. Secondly, it's not as obvious as binding read SMS. Again, this goes back to the security automation point just mentioned. Furthermore, this may actually trick unaware users or even possibly unaware malware analysts. They may see that the notification bind listener is there and not actually know the full capabilities of abuse there. Instead, they'll be looking for things like read SMS. The obvious con of using this permission, however, is that it requires users to actually go into the notification settings on Android and manually assign the notification access permission to the application. You can see in the screenshot on the slide right now that this is quite a detailed message, detailing that the application will be able to read all notifications, action notifications, and that this could actually in some way be abused. At the end of the day, users are going to be users, and many of them will bypass these warning screens. For an example of this, we can just look to insecure TLS certificate errors. It's quite often common that users will just bypass these errors in order to access the service that they want to. So this leads me to my final slide. What can you do as the company, and what can you do as a developer? Well, firstly, we shouldn't trust the end user to make the right security choices for your own application security. We should be working under some level of assumption that there is already going to be hostile applications installed on the Android device. Let's say there's a web application and a mobile application. When the end user signs into the web application, they are prompted for a 2FA code from the mobile application. This mobile application generates a 2FA code into a notification, which is then sent out to the system. This is more of an ease of usability feature than anything. It's just quicker for the user to get the 2FA code from the notification rather than open the application. However, as you should know by now, there could be malware on the Android device listening for these notifications. Thus, we should not include such sensitive codes in notifications. Instead, the notification should prompt the user to enter the application to access the 2FA code in this example. Ultimately, this is all one big balancing act. It's a balancing act of security, usability, and functionality. Ultimately, we want the application to be functional and secure. Should 2FA codes be included in notifications? Probably not. That neglects the security aspect too much. But what about a reminder notification? Well, if we don't put that into notifications and force the user into the application, that abuses the functionality side of things. The takeaway for this talk is that Android notifications are not private, and you need to consider what's the correct path of action for your application. I'd recommend doing a review, seeing if any high value information is in notifications, and if it is, start considering why is it there and should it be there. Well, that brings us to the end of our talk. I hope this has been educational and has informed you about Android notification abuse, especially with malware. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Cheers.
Thanks to Angus for providing that very informative recording for us.